Boy, yeah, I really got sidetracked with this one. Welcome back to Concordia Jedi, guys, and to this part 2 of What If Obi-Wan Killed Darth Vader in A New Hope. And boy, let me tell you, I know I've said this before, but the reason this one took so long was, I really burnt myself out while recording and editing the first one to the point where I got so tired of even thinking of completing this. But I'm finally back in a mindset where we're ready to finish it. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and showing continual interest in the what ifs. So without any further ado, let's get right back into it. Just a heads up, the audio quality going forward might be a little bit different because this is an older recording. Like I said, I had everything recorded. I just could not bring myself to edit it. So without further ado, let's go. When we left off, Han had made a terrible discovery about what had happened to Luke, and Leia was continuing her training with Yoda and Obi-Wan on Dagobah. While levitating large stones one day, Leia could feel a cold shiver down her spine, drawing her attention towards the direction of the cave. Asking what was in there, Yoda would tell her of the cave, and that she must go in, advising her not to take her blaster. Leia would agree to this and would enter the cave, the feeling of darkness surrounding her as Obi-Wan would observe from a distance. Suddenly, Leia would be encountered by a dark hooded figure walking towards her. Leia's throat would suddenly tighten as the figure would grip her neck with the Force. Fighting back, Leia would send a powerful Force push towards the figure, sending them backwards. The figure would then send torrents of lightning at Leia, letting out a blood-curdling cackle. Leia would barely be able to catch the attack and force it back. The energy would build and burst, sending both of them flying back, knocking the assailant headfirst into a rock. Leia would rush over and remove the hood from her attacker's face, only to see
Luke.
A twisted, scarred visage of Luke would be staring back at her before vanishing. Leia would rush out of the cave and tell Yoda and Ben about what happened. Yoda would converse with Ben, both realizing the danger in this situation.
What should I do?
Complete your training. You must.
But what about Luke? He could be in trouble.
Difficult to see, the future is. Always in motion is the future.
Ben would suddenly sense a new presence entering the atmosphere. The Falcon would land and Han would run out, hugging Leia.
Did you find Luke?
Afraid not.
Chewie would come out carrying R2's still damaged body.
Oh no! R2! What happened to you? Oh, how do you keep getting yourself into these situations?
Relax, Goldenrod. Chewie can fix him up, but you're lucky we found him when we did.
Han, what happened to Luke?
Han would tell Leia about them finding the X-Wing, and no sign of Luke, and of the Slave One.
I have to go. We have to find Luke.
Patience, Leia. If Luke has been captured by a bounty hunter, somebody obviously hired him to do so.
The Emperor.
If this is the case, you would stand no chance against him as you are. Even with the full force of the rebellion behind you, you would be killed. Or worse.
But we can't just sit here and do nothing. He's my brother.
Leia, I know the feeling of helplessness. Of knowing someone you love is suffering, but unable to help them. But if you are taken, if the Emperor claims you, then all hope will be lost. Yes, to Obi-Wan you must listen. Strong you have become, but stronger still you must become, if you are to save Luke.
Leia would sit, feeling the hopelessness of the situation surround her. In the end, however, she would agree to complete her training first. Seeing Leia in distress, Han would decide to stay a few days to comfort Leia while Chewie and 3PO fixed R2. As he talked more with Leia, however, days would become weeks. He would make an occasional trip off-world to keep in contact with the rebellion, and of course to stock up on supplies and provisions. Let's be honest, he wasn't going to touch Yoda's stew with a 10-foot pole. But he would always be sure to stay close by. Soon, Leia would have progressed even further in her training, her skills far beyond Luke's in Return of the Jedi.
I think it's time for you to take your next step as a Jedi.
Yoda would emerge from his hut with a box of materials, including a small, colorless crystal.
You are now ready to construct your lightsaber. Ordinarily, you would have been expected to harvest your own crystal, but these days it's nearly impossible to find one. Luckily, Master Yoda has kept a few relics from the old days. You may study my lightsaber for reference, but in order to make the crystal your own, you must meditate and imbue the crystal with your energy. Leia would nod and step into the Falcon, finding a small room where she could concentrate. Using Obi-Wan's lightsaber and a book of instructions, Leia would spend over a day meditating and concentrating until finally she completed her lightsaber.
You finished it?
I think so.
Well, go on.
Taking a deep breath, Leia would activate her lightsaber. A vibrant blue blade would flash to life in front of her. It was perfect. Han would give Leia a coy smile.
Congrats, Jedi.
In that moment, Leia would pull Han into a passionate embrace. Within the next few weeks, Leia would have vastly improved in her skills with a lightsaber. Soon the time would come. Leia would be ready. Han and Chewie would ready the Falcon and Leia would talk with Yoda and Ben.
No more training do you require. Ready you are for the task ahead.
So where should I start? I need to find Luke and help him.
Our first course of action should be to rendezvous with the rebellion. If anyone knows the Emperor's next move, they will.
Will you come with us, Master Yoda?
Weak I am growing. Of no use I would be to you. Remain here. I will.
Yoda would say goodbye to Ben and Leia as they would enter the Falcon and fly through the air into the atmosphere.
May the Force be with you.
The Falcon would reach the Alliance fleet, and upon their arrival, Leia would be greeted warmly and brought up to speed with everything they had learned. They had discovered that the Empire had secretly begun construction on a new Death Star far more powerful than the first, and from here onward, events would play out similarly as they did in Return of the Jedi. They would learn of the shield generator on Endor and of the Emperor's arrival, overseeing the Death Star's construction. Except here, because Han never reunited with Lando, Han and Chewie would be selected for the attack on the Death Star, and Leia would be sent to Endor with Obi-Wan and a team of rebel soldiers. During this time period, Obi-Wan would be around 61 years old. Combined with his advanced aging due to the years of stress under the harsh twin suns of Tatooine, it would be clear to him that he was no longer in his prime, and that his involvement in this mission would be considered questionable by many of the other rebels. But Obi-Wan knew he still had life in his old bones, and if he stood on the sidelines and let that flame inside his heart die out, he wouldn't forgive himself. He would be there for his apprentice and for the rebellion. Upon arriving on Endor, things would go differently from how they originally transpired. Seeing the Imperial scout troopers, Leia would ask Ben how they would get past them. Perhaps it is time we put your training to good use. Sneaking up behind two of the scouts, Leia and Ben would mind trick them into stunning the other two scouts, knocking them unconscious. Before they could process what had happened, the two scouts would find themselves disarmed and under arrest. After a few more mind tricks, they would discover the location of the shield generator. However, night would be approaching swiftly and the rebels would set up camp for the evening. As they rested, however, and Leia discussed plans for confronting Palpatine, the two Jedi would sense several beings surrounding them. Igniting their lightsabers, Leia and Obi-Wan would stand ready for a fight as the rebels would wake up. Soon, they would find themselves surrounded, not by stormtroopers, but by several small, furry creatures with primitive weaponry.
Master, what are these things?
Natives. The creatures would get closer, prodding several soldiers with their spears. The creatures would tense up, preparing to attack until a voice spoke up.
No, please, no violence!
The creatures' eyes would suddenly grow wide as they would chitter amongst themselves before starting to bow towards 3PO, chanting something in their native tongue.
How peculiar.
Obi-Wan, recognizing this behavior, would smile slightly. He'd traveled far enough in his days to know how to handle a situation like this. 3PO, you are an interpreter, are you not?
Of course, sir. Remember, I am fluent in over 6 million forms of communication.
Do you understand them?
I believe so. I do believe they are under the impression that I am some sort of god.
As I thought. 3PO, I need you to listen to what I tell you. Tell them that their world is currently in grave danger and that we are here to help. If they can provide us with supplies and shelter for the night, we will do everything in our power to liberate their planet and leave them in peace. 3PO would talk to the leader of this group of creatures, telling them everything Obi-Wan said. All the while, Leia would offer some of their food to several of their new guests. Seeing this gesture and believing what 3PO said, the creatures would agree to take them to their village on the condition that they hand their weapons over until they were deemed not to be a threat. Reluctantly, the rebels and the Jedi would hand their weapons over, and they would be escorted to the village in the trees and brought before the chief of these strange beings, who they would learn are known as Ewoks. Obi-Wan would put his skills as a negotiator to good use here, as 3PO would translate everything he said. He would tell them of the struggles of the rebellion and the tyranny of the Empire. Soon, not only would the Ewoks agree to aid them in their struggles, but each of them were now honorary members of the tribe. Leia would make friends with several of the Ewoks, including a particularly friendly one named Wicket. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, would be standing outside on the Canopy Bridge, contemplating their next move. Obi-Wan was intelligent. He knew that if the Emperor was on board the Death Star, he would no doubt have his own station aboard, one that would be heavily guarded. It would take no small amount of stealth and cunning to reach the Emperor. Leia would join him and they would formulate a plan to find the Imperial outpost on the Forest Moon. There would no doubt be a transport there that they could take to the Death Star. Once on board, Leia, using stolen stormtrooper armor, would handcuff Obi-Wan and bring him before the Emperor, where they would spring their attack. Within the next few hours, they would leave and the deactivation of the shield generator would be left to the rebels and the Ewoks. A plan would be formulated, and soon the rebels would part with Leia and Ben, who would make their way to the Imperial outpost. Using a mind trick on the two guards keeping watch over the outpost elevator, Leia would steal the stormtrooper's armor and put it on, keeping her lightsaber hidden with Obi-Wan while she would hold on to his. They would be confronted by Imperial security, and Leia would report that this Jedi had come to turn himself in. Though suspicious, the Imperial officer would send Leia with a squad of stormtroopers to a waiting shuttle, and after being given security clearance, Leia and Ben would be on their way. All the while, the rebel soldiers would infiltrate the shield generator, and things would play out similarly, with the rebels getting captured, only for the Ewoks to intervene and even the odds. The Alliance fleet would arrive above Endor, and the battle would begin with Han and Chewie piloting the Falcon with expert accuracy, waiting for the shield to fall. At this time, Leia and Ben would arrive, confronted by a team of security officers prepared to take Ben to the Emperor. Leia would subtly wave her hand in front of their faces.
The Emperor has requested I deliver the Jedi personally.
Giving Leia the clearance codes, they would make their way to the elevator and would make their way to the throne room. Removing the armor, Leia along with Ben would keep their lightsabers ready. The elevator would slow down, and soon, the doors would open as Leia and Ben would be confronted by two of the Emperor's guards. Leia and Obi-Wan would quickly dispatch them by tossing them aside and knocking them unconscious. Approaching closer, the chair at the top of the throne room steps would slowly turn, revealing Emperor Palpatine with a crooked smile on his face.
Master Kenobi and young Leia, welcome. I have been expecting you two.
Your security leaves much to be desired, Your Highness.
Do not flatter yourself, Master Kenobi. I knew you would come. Do you think me so blind as to believe your plan would go unnoticed? You may have killed Vader, but in doing so, you opened my eyes to new possibilities. Vader was a hollow shell of a Sith. I knew that one day I would find a new apprentice.
The door behind Ben and Leia would open, as a hooded figure would emerge, igniting a blood-red lightsaber.
And I have.
Utilizing this distraction, Palpatine would send a barrage of lightning at Obi-Wan, sending him flying back into the wall with great force. Leia would activate her lightsaber and charge at Palpatine, only for her blade to be blocked by the dark figure.
Foolish girl, you cannot hope to compare with the power of the dark side. Now, my apprentice, destroy these two feeble Jedi and complete what your father could not.
Yes, my master.
Leia would gasp as the figure would remove his cloak. It was Luke, but not the Luke she once knew. Not the Luke who saved her on the Death Star. He was twisted, his face scarred and filled with rage, his eyes alight with a sickly yellow glow. His once blue lightsaber now shone a deep crimson.
Luke, please don't do this. Don't let him control you.
Luke would simply laugh as he and Leia would engage in a terrible battle. Brother and sister would be so evenly matched as their blades collided. Meanwhile on Endor, the rebel soldiers would manage to destroy the shield generator, though they would experience terrible casualties. With the shield down, Han and the other fighters would begin their assault, avoiding the blasts from the Death Star and the Star Destroyers. Obi-Wan would slowly rise to his feet, activating his lightsaber. Palpatine would turn his gaze toward him.
You were foolish to come here, Kenobi. Just as Skywalker fell by your hand, so shall you fall by mine.
Palpatine's next torrent of lightning would meet Obi-Wan's blade, the blue plasma beam bending and warping under the might of the Emperor's power. Leia, seeing Ben in trouble, would disengage from Luke and rush to his aid, only for her fallen brother to reach out with the Force, grabbing her throat.
Luke. No, this isn't you.
Silence! Your death will spell the end of the rebellion, and the end of the Jedi.
Across the galaxy, Yoda would feel his energy drain. Soon, he would die. But he would not allow his death to be without merit. Closing his eyes, Yoda would die, passing into the Force. Leia would struggle to breathe, her sight growing dark. Ben's strength would soon fail him, and the wrath of Palpatine would send him to the next world. Suddenly, a voice would call out to Ben and Leia.
Alone you are not. Rise and fight you will. The Force is with you, as am I.
Ben and Leia would close their eyes, calling on the Force and every ounce of strength they had. Ben would send a mighty Force blast at Palpatine, momentarily breaking the Sith Lord's concentration. Leia would gather her strength, and with a shockwave of energy she would break free from Luke's grasp, sending him flying back and giving her enough time to rush to Ben's aid.
Impudent child.
Palpatine would direct his full power at Leia, bringing her to her knees, her shrieks of anguish filling the room, only overpowered by the mad laughter of the Emperor. Ben would try to rise to his feet, completely exhausted and on the verge of collapsing. Luke would be dazed, his vision blurry. Seeing his dark master on the verge of victory, he would smile. Suddenly, however, he was overcome with another feeling, one of sadness, emptiness.
Luke, follow not your father's path, or lose the only family you have left you will.
Family? What was he talking about? Then suddenly, it would dawn on him. This feeling he had always sensed around Leia, this connection. It was more than simple friendship. It couldn't be, but in his heart he knew. Leia was his sister. In this moment, the small spark of light inside Luke reignited. There was still a chance. He could make things right. Luke would grab his weapon, and rushing over to the Emperor, Luke would throw himself between Leia and Palpatine, deflecting his wrath, the bolts of lightning sparking off in every direction, causing fire and flames to sprout from different corners of the throne room.
So you have elected to die along with the Jedi. So be it. You will not stop me, Skywalker.
I will not be your puppet any longer.
Ben would rise to his feet, joining Luke. Leia, though hurt and weakened, would rise as well. Palpatine would back away from the three of them. He could not easily take down all three. Suddenly, he would smile. Sending a blinding flash of lightning at the three Jedi, they would be forced to deflect, giving Palpatine enough time to rise into the air using the Force. Palpatine would grab onto the support beams and the very foundations of the throne room, beginning to crush the room, intending to destroy the entire structure.
You Jedi failed to grasp the true power of the dark side. Your deaths will be swift and terrible, but I will reign eternal as ruler of all the galaxy.
The floor would crack and rumble. Hopelessness would set into Leia's heart. All she had worked for her entire life would be gone. Ben would close his eyes. The Force called him home. Luke, however, would stand up. Dropping his lightsaber, he would rush forward, grabbing onto the Emperor and using all his might would contain the two of them in a large dome of Force energy. The Emperor would cry out in horror. He couldn't break free.
Luke!
Go! Hurry!
Leia would retrieve Luke's weapon, and with Ben, the two would escape down the barely functioning elevator, just as the throne room would erupt in a flash of Force energy, ending the Emperor and his tyranny, and seemingly ending the son of Anakin Skywalker as well. Meanwhile, Han would reach the exposed reactor shaft and pilot the Falcon inside.
This is it, Chewie. This is all or nothing.
The Falcon would weave its way through the tight, narrow corridors, making its way closer and closer to the main reactor. Leia and Ben would make their way to their shuttle, hopping on board and exiting the hangar before flying out of the doomed battle station. Ben would collapse, not only from exhaustion, but sadness. Leia as well would be filled with great sorrow, and yet there was something else. Something she couldn't describe. Before she could think more on the matter, several TIE fighters would begin firing upon them. Using all her skills, she would try to evade them. Soon, however, their shuttle would take a direct hit. One more blast and they would be vaporized. The TIE fighters, however, would be shot down by laser blasts, giving Leia the chance she needed to escape the dogfights and make their way back to the forest moon. She glanced behind to see who saved them, but saw nothing. Han would finally reach the main reactor as the Falcon and Red Squadron would destroy the power regulators, causing the reactor to collapse in on itself. Han and the others would make it out of the Death Star with just moments to spare as the battle station would explode in a massive ball of fire. With the Empire's greatest weapon destroyed, the Alliance would reconvene on Endor. Han would find Leia and Ben, who would tell him everything. The Alliance would hold a grand memorial for Luke Skywalker. Even as the service would progress, Leia still would not be able to shake the sensation that something was amiss. Ben sensed it too, but he too wouldn't be able to grasp what he was feeling. A few days would pass, and Leia and Ben would be called to an emergency Alliance briefing.
Well, we have searched thoroughly, and though Palpatine's body has been found, there was no sign of Luke's.
Leia's eyes would light up.
Even stranger, the Emperor's personal shuttle was reported to have taken off shortly before the station was destroyed. Princess, is there something you would like to share?
No, it's nothing.
After the briefing, Ben and Leia would talk on the bridge overlooking the vast forest landscape.
Luke, I think he's alive.
You may be right. Come to think of it, I never did feel his presence leave this world.
Should we look for him?
I sense Luke doesn't want to be found. Not yet, at least. Otherwise, he would have rejoined us here. For now, I think he must follow his own path. But we will see him again.
Leia would smile, looking at the setting sun. At the same time, on a distant world, a hooded figure would stare at a rising twin sunset. Luke would stand atop a large cliff overlooking the Dune Sea. If there was one thing he was sure of, it's that the threat of the dark side would never truly be gone. It consumed his father. It nearly consumed him. But he would make it his new mission to combat the forces of darkness when they arose. Maybe not as a Jedi, but something more. One day, he would reunite with his friends. But for now, his destiny lies along a different path. A path between the light and the dark. Obi-Wan would continue to train Leia, who would marry Han, and soon give birth to a young child who they named Ben. Leia and Ben would spend the next couple of years finding Force-sensitive beings and training them in the ways of the Force, setting up an academy on Yavin 4. The day would soon come, however, when Obi-Wan Kenobi would pass away. His spirit manifesting as a Force ghost, watching over Leia and her students along with Yoda. Leia would become the new Grand Master of a new generation of Jedi, helping to bring peace to a troubled galaxy. Whew! So there you go, guys.
Now, I know I took some wild turns with this one, the reason being that I've seen a few other channels cover this scenario, and they usually end up with the same happy ending scenario of the Empire being destroyed and Luke becoming a Jedi Master, sometimes with Leia, and setting up a new order. However, I wanted to go with something a bit more bittersweet and, in my opinion, more realistic. Leia was definitely the more level-headed and strong-willed of Anakin's kids, and I feel that had Obi-Wan killed Vader, the truth would eventually come out, and I really think Luke would be upset. Combine this with Yoda's initial refusal to train him and Palpatine's need for a new apprentice, and it creates a perfect storm in which Leia trains as a Jedi and Luke is captured and tortured, being twisted and warped into becoming a servant of Sidious. As for the ending, I feel in this kind of scenario, Luke would not be so keen to jump right into training as a Jedi. He would want to wait until he was more experienced and wiser before making such a commitment. I think he would come to realize that his destiny would be to serve the light, maybe not as a Jedi, but as something new. Who knows though? At some point he may very well choose to follow the Jedi path when he feels he's become a more patient and wise servant of the Force. I also feel that this was just a bit more of an interesting departure from what we've come to expect from Luke. More nuanced in a way. But let me know what you guys think. Did you guys like this video? Did you not like it? Did I go too far, or could you see this as a plausible path for the story to take? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. We'll see you next time, and remember, the Force will be with you. Always.